This tutorial is going to be for the My Grade 12s regarding the CBT. Um, at this point in your project, you should have already created your graphics. Right now, I'm on Bridge, just showcasing Victoria's graphics for Kanye West DVD. And so I'm going to double click some of the content she has. So she has MP4s here. So I'm going to use Bridge's filtering. So she has 4 videos that she was going to bring into her DVD. She has an Illustrator file that has both the cover and the actual disc, I would imagine. Yep, great. And I have some Photoshop files that she has some Photoshop files that she was going to use for her animation. She's going to bring into After Effects and Animate. Okay. So notice, guys, this is all in a folder. I call this last name, first name, my CPT, and I have a really rudimentary intro MP4, sorry, video file that I'll be using later. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, what I want to show you guys is the assignment. So if you go to our smkcomtech.com, go to the grade 12, and click on the CPT authoring, you'll get the details for the project. And in particular, there's this link there that's very useful for this, actually essential. Click on it, and it'll take you to Adobe's website. And what it's showing you here is all the details regarding the pixel size, the pixel aspect ratio, okay, and the size. And even gives you some recommendations in terms of what font size to use, what color system to use for the DVD menu. Now, it even tells you, explains step by step some details in regards to the Photoshop file. In particular, it gives you a nice little visual here, the coding and scripting of how you should be naming your layers for it to work on Encore. Okay, and this is very particular. So use this resource to help you make a beautiful DVD or Blu-ray. Okay, and I'll be using it as well to reference. And notice the codes here, guys. Very important. Okay, cool. So let's bounce out of this. Let's go back to Bridge, and um, let's start with Encore. Okay. Now, what's important, guys, when you create a new project, so I won't save. Make sure you're saving it in the location where you know you're going to find it and where the rest of the content is. So if you have all your DVD, your MP4s, the videos that you downloaded off YouTube, and your DVD menus, Photoshop files, Illustrator files, just make sure it's in the same location, just so that it's organized that way. So I'm going to go browse, and I'm going to open up this folder, and it's going to save it in here. So I'm going to name this your last name, first name. CPT. Okay, and you can pick and choose Blu-ray. For most of you guys, I'm just going to say DVD is probably the best. And it will downsize or transcode it to the size that needs to be to work for the DVD. So if you have higher res images, it will actually download it, downgrade it to the size it needs to be. Okay. Bear with me for a sec as I type my name. Cool. Now, this interface is pretty simple because there's nothing really on it. You got to bring stuff into it. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, one of the first things you want to do is probably bring in the videos you downloaded off YouTube. Okay. So in this area here, the project, you can right click and import. Now you can import as an asset. Asset essentially is just multimedia. In this case, you want to bring those videos with a timeline. So I'm going to click as import as timeline. So zoom in on that so you make sure you can see that. That's quite important. Okay. If you mistakenly just import as an asset, it's not a big deal. You can always make it a timeline afterwards, but just makes it easier to do it first thing. All right. So in here, I'm going to go to Victoria's folder that has all our videos right here. Select them all and import all of them. So what it's done is it's actually created a timeline with the video content. So you can see right here, so I'm going to zoom in on this. You can actually scrub through the video in the little, okay? And this is a timeline. Now note, on this timeline, you can do something really cool, which is create chapter points. If you want to right click on this, you can say add a chapter point to intervals or add a chapter point at a specific point of time. So if you scrub through your timeline and you want to put a chapter point right here, right click and add a chapter point. Or you can actually just say right click, add chapter points at, say, every 1 minute. So 1 minute, 5 frames, there are chapter points. And if you need to, you can select one, right click and say delete. Okay, and this is cool because you can actually link up your buttons to specific points in your video, as just opposed to the beginning. You actually started off somewhere down the line. And this is how some of the authors that do DVDs will do chapter points for movies. Okay, so I'm going to save this file. I have my content in. Now I'm going to bring it in my menu. But wait, I don't have a menu. So going to this, using this as a resource, I'm going to choose a 1920 by 1080 1.0 aspect ratio format. And what I'm going to do in Photoshop is I have one already open, so I'm just going to close it and show you what I did to make a new one. So I drop down to presets, go to film and video, size. I chose the HD 1080p, 29.97, and voila, it shows up. And it's white. I can have it transparent, but I'll leave it white. It's square pixel. I could change it, but I don't need to because it references on the website just to leave it as is. Okay, I'm going to press OK, and voila, you have a DVD menu blank, essentially. Now this is here where you're going to do is start making your buttons. Okay. Now, going back to the website resource, if you scroll down, they'll explain the coding for your buttons. Now, if you want to use Adobe Illustrator to design your graphics and bring it in, you can do that. Or if you're comfortable, you can start designing buttons. Essentially, buttons can be any shape, but you want to keep user interface in mind, something that's legible to the viewer watching on the screen, and you don't want to have graphics going too close to the edge or the bleed area of your screen. This first area around here is like a do not enter for text. Okay, have your buttons inside your screen area. So with a new layer selected, I can click and drag a little marquee. I can brush in color. My color right now is yellow. Or you can go to Edit, Fill, choose a color, and it'll fill it that color. Okay, and then on top of that, you can grab your text tool and start typing in text. Kanye 1. I don't know the song for Kanye. I'm an old guy, but I'm just going to say it's going to be called Kanye 1 just for simplicity's sake. Okay. Now, what's important with Photoshop so that Encore understands the scripting of the buttons is you got to code them. And one of those other things you got to know is how to make a new folder. So, group 1, if I go back to the website, if I'm creating a button, it's got to be coded bracket plus sign bracket, and then button or button set, whatever you like to call it. But essentially, those brackets are essential. Oops, sorry, back to Photoshop. So I'm going to rename this bracket plus sign bracket, and I'll say button 1. Okay. What I'm going to do is grab that and that by holding shift and placing it inside that group. Okay. Now, Vic had a really cool little graphic character that I can incorporate. So I'm going to actually just click and drag this guy into my layout. There he is. And what I'm going to do is bring him into my button. And I'm going to do something kind of clever. Just going to shrink him down a bit. And I'm going to create a highlighted area. So when a user clicks on this button, this little teddy bear guy is going to appear. So I'm going to go back to my code and just double check. And that's called a highlight. And the code there is bracket equals sign 1 bracket highlight. Okay, so let's do that again to Photoshop. I'm going to rename it. So I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see what's happening. Bracket equals, oops, equal sign 1, bracket, and I'm just going to highlight. Okay. I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to call this Kanye menu 3 because I already had 1 and 2 already made. Awesome. So, a little trick I'm going to do here is right click and duplicate. I'm going to call this button 2. Now it's done. It's actually created 2 buttons right next to each other. Oops, I apologize. Let's grab the whole group. Actually, I'm going to do based on group here. And I'll do the same thing again. Actually, I'll do this multiple times. Duplicate 3. Move the group. And do the same one more time. I know, exciting stuff. Okay, so spread these out a bit, maybe space them. Hold shift and click these groups together. And I'm going to say space these out evenly between each other. Awesome. Little cool feature. It's very similar as Illustrator. But obviously I don't want my button saying Kanye 1. So I'm going to go back to my text tool. Click on that and make that 2. Three. And 4. Now, obviously, you would probably type in the name of the song or whatnot, okay? And the brilliance of duplicating, guys, is I just repeated the same script over and over again, okay? Now, this background image is important because that's essentially going to be replaced with your video animation that you're going to use for your background for your interface. Notice I'm not putting much graphics in here. I could bring the branding aspect into this, but I can do that in my After Effects, okay? Now, let's save this again and go to Encore. Now, we're going to import that menu. So I'm going to right click on this project area, import the menu, and essentially you're importing the Photoshop file. Kanye menu 3, I'm going to press open, and it's importing it in. Awesome. Now you notice that the teddy bear is not showing. Well, that's because when we click on layers here, you can see that when we drop down, because we coded it with that brackets equal size 1, that's not shown and visible, and it won't be visible only on Photoshop. It's like a little hidden thing that the user will see when they render this. Okay? So these are buttons. If I click on it, and because we put that code, Encore knows that this is a button, and you can link it up to an asset. Okay? So this button is now linked to, it says not set. Now there's many ways we can do this. We can drop down, and it recognizes all the content in our video, project bay. So if I wanted homecoming, I can say, hey, go to chapter 1 on homecoming video. So when a user clicks on this button, it will go to homecoming chapter 1, right? Notice you could have picked homecoming chapter 2, 3, and 4, okay? Because we added those chapter points, but I didn't add chapter points to the other ones. Another way of linking stuff up is using the pick whip. Click the button, select this, and link it up to the video you want. So say good morning. And this one will go to good life. And the fourth one, and notice I'm doing it to the actual time code, timeline, not the actual asset. So I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to preview it. Now before I preview it, I'm just going to render it. Actually, no need to. I'll say preview. problem occurred. I didn't tell the computer that this is my first thing I wanted to go to. It's automatically going to go right now to this first video. So I'm going to click on my menu, right click and say set as first play. So it will go to my menu. Now you're probably wondering, well, don't you want the introduction to be first? Well, yes, I haven't imported it yet, but essentially you want your introduction to be the first play. But for now, we're going to render this, preview it. Now notice the teddy bear shows up, and if I move my mouse across, right, the teddy bear is activating the highlight. Okay, so you can tell I'm on Kanye 1. So when I click on this, it'll play that video. Chapter points. Now notice there's a problem here. I didn't set up the end action. End action is determines what the end of this timeline will do. So what I should have done is gone to these videos and said, hey, I need an end action. In this case, you can say, I want this to go back to the menu and go back to the default button or the next button. So when I save this, after they watch this video, it'll go to the second button on the menu. So let's render that and check that out. Okay. So I press play, plays the video, next chapter, and next chapter. Notice it went back to the menu, but it had the second selection highlighted for me. So keep that in mind when designing your interface. If you're playing on your videos, you want the one video to flow to the other if you like that idea. Okay, so I'm going to say exit and return. A few things I'm going to show you before I finish this video essentially is, well, how do I change my background? Okay, no problem. Let's go to our menu here, and we have our basics. If you click on motion, we can assign a video. So let me import an asset. And I'm not making this a timeline. I'm just going to bring this an asset. And this will essentially be, let me just go up a folder. It could be this is my intro animation or your intro graphic for your background. Let's imagine whatever you did in After Effects when you exported it as MP4. I'm going to bring it in. And this is going to be essentially the video that goes behind the menu. Okay. Notice this background is going to get replaced by that video. It's not showing it right now because now I have to render the project. Okay. So here's the menu. My video is going to be connected to this intro. Right. So you can see it's playing in the background. This I'll render it. So if I want to see how it works, it's going to try to render the frames of the video in the background so my menu works properly. So I'm just going to wait for it to render. Any second now. Beautiful. So when I go to preview this, and I think there's a way over here to preview this. Oh, I forget where it is. Anyways, I'm going to go File, Preview. And there's a little slight animation in the background while the user navigates the interface, uses his or her buttons to navigate. Okay. And so if I pick 4, I'll play 4. Okay, so that works. Now the only thing I have really shown you guys is bringing in the intro animation. Well, that's not a problem. You can specify that, bring your animation in, import it, and just say right click, be first play, and then you would tell it to be the end action. The end action is what happens to the end of this video. Where does it go to afterwards? Back to the menu, back to the introduction. You pick and choose what actions you want. And you'll notice that if you went to go build this, there's a thing called check project. It'll let you know what errors you have. So Right now, I have two interactions. I can double click and you can specify, hey, I want this back to the menu. Boom, and I'll just say default menu, end action, default menu. Cool. Going back to build, check project. Surprising, I have no problems. One thing I did forget to do is actually go to flowchart, select this project, and give it a name. So I'll just call this Kanye. This will show up also on the set top layer, the name of the disk, right? And you can see with this flowchart here how you're organized your content of your video, a DVD disk. I'm going to save this and explain how to burn this afterwards.